Well, Governor, I'm so grateful for your time today. And as we were just discussing, as we came up live, you were this morning at the funeral for fallen officer Didarul Islam, who was killed in just another shooting. I understand the gunman who killed him used an assault rifle that's illegal in New York. You're now calling for a federal ban, but if I hate to just jump into policy because it's such a difficult morning to talk about this, but this is what really is on voters' minds. You're calling for this federal ban, and we know that this Congress isn't going to pass it. So what's the value of pushing for something that we don't expect Congress to do?
I think there's value in shaming them. 65% of the people who live in this great country want a ban on assault weapons. So it's common sense. It saves lives. New York State, with our sensible gun laws, and we're the toughest in the nation. We have the lowest homicide rate by guns of all the big states in America. I mean, there's a direct correlation to our safety. New York City is the safest big city in this country. We don't allow this. We also work hard to get handguns off the streets. But we talk about these weapons of mass destruction that are only designed for maximum human carnage, whether it's on a battlefield. It has no purpose in our society. It has no purpose. There's no sportsman who requires this to go deer hunting. Hunting is a big culture in upstate New York. It's where I'm from. But I know what people use. You do not need this weapon, and it's only used for horrible, horrible experiences like this. The outcomes, whether it's a school shooting, a theater, a shopping mall, a grocery store, like happened in my hometown of Buffalo just a few years ago, 10 people slaughtered with a rapid-fire, high-powered magazine. It has to stop. So I say I may not get the results I want, but we cannot be silent in this moment. This is an opportunity for all people, not just Democrats, but independents and Republicans and moms to stand up and say, I don't want anything to happen to my kid. And I want my husband to come home from work when he's a police officer. I mean, let's just stand up and show some courage, because our elected officials certainly are, but I don't mind shaming them at all.
You have a powerful voice, and I know this is a very difficult day, emotional day. There are so many challenges coming across your desk, and another issue on which you've been outspoken this week has to do with redistricting. This week, Texas has moved to turn 5 of their congressional seats that are now held by Democrats into essentially the hands of Republican voters and redistrict their state. You have said, and I want to just take a look at this, that you tweeted that we won't let Trump and the GOP, quote, steal the nation's future. But New York's constitution doesn't actually allow for redistricting before the next midterm. I want to tell folks who are listening to this that former Democratic Attorney General Eric Holder, who worked for Obama, is working on Democratic redistricting issues. And he said that he supports the idea that responsible action should be taken by Democrats to ensure the foundations of our democracy are not permanently eroded. In other words, fight when you can. But again, realistically, given the limits of your constitution, what can you do?
Guess what? The Constitution can be amended.
Before the midterms?
Not these midterms, but 2028. We have a path. I mean, it's an arduous process. I can't say we're going to be successful anytime before 2028, but here's what happens. You have to pass an amendment through the legislature 2 consecutive sessions. So we do it in 2026. We do it again in 2027, 2 separate sessions. It goes on the ballot to the voters the fall of 2027. And guess what? It's a new game in 2028, which should be 4 years earlier than our current constitution allows. Otherwise, we wouldn't get the changes until what has always been the norm. You wait for the census to be done. You address population shifts. You do it in a thoughtful, non-political, smart way. But you know what? That's not getting us very far. And I'm not going to, go into this fight with our hands tied behind our back. We have to just demand change and say, if you're going to play that, you're going to do that, we're fighting fire with fire, and we're not going to let you win. So this is for everything. This is the future of our country. And I've been working so hard to help Hakeem Jeffries become the speaker. In New York State, we had 7 battleground congressional districts that were up for grabs. Could have gone either way, trending Republican. And I fought hard working with Hakeem Jeffries and the DCCC. I raised a lot of money to our state party, which can raise at higher levels. I used that money to open up 42 field offices in those 7 districts, which is extraordinary. Hired an extra 100 people. And you know what? We won 5 out of 7. So we wanted to build on that. First, we have to protect our new incumbents because the winds are still pretty tough out there in some of these areas, Long Island and the Hudson Valley. But also, I plan on picking up more. We're going to pick up more. And Lee Stefanik, who looks like she wants to run against me because she's, really doesn't like her job anymore and is so disappointed that Donald Trump realized that maybe she shouldn't be the UN ambassador. She does not want to stay there. She's going to run against me. She's going to lose. So there's a pickup seat right there, an open seat in the North Country. It's a conservative area. But you know why we can win this? Because the Trump policies are killing that district. Whether it's the war with Canada, this is on the border with Canada. Their economy is tanking because the tourist visitors are not coming over. The tariffs are hurting the farmers and manufacturers up there. Healthcare, rural hospitals are already on the brink. Yeah. This will push them over the edge. So you lose 5 hospitals in Lee Stefanik's district. Where's she going to go? We're going to pick up that seat as well as other ones. So we'll do our part for 2026. I feel confident. But if the Republicans are going to screw around and change the rules of the game, then they need to know at their states that even with our constitutional constraints, are willing to fight back.
Interesting. I want to come back to the tariffs and some of the Medicaid impacts, but let's stay on political power for one moment. I've heard that you have said, and this really made me laugh, that you have become a New Yorker's therapist ever since Mamdani won the primary in New York City. For folks who don't know, how much power do you as the governor have versus the mayor of New York City? And what could you actually control if he's elected?
Well, New York City is a political subdivision of the state of New York. We have immense power. Every year, the mayor comes to New York City. They call it Tin Cup Day, when they ask for money for all kinds of programs to deal with education. When we fund the education budget, we provide money for childcare and homelessness programs and all kinds of resources we provide. So a mayor can be an ally to a governor, but there isn't always a history of that. I changed that dynamic compared to my predecessor, who was at war with the mayor of New York and was always withholding money and, trying to get political leverage. But I decided, I represent 8.3 million New York City residents as well. And I don't want to be an antagonistic relationship. I want to make sure we work together. But the point is this: they need us for money. Or you could talk about, taxes. It has to come through us. Free buses sounds great, but I run the MTA and the bus system. You have to come through me. So
do you want free buses?
Well, we actually put in some free buses as a trial, but we lose $800 million a year if we do that. So, okay, in this time when we're getting massive cuts from Washington, I like the idea of it, but we got to do things in a smart way at the right time because I have a lot of other cuts to deal with people's livelihoods. Our bus fares are relatively inexpensive, $2 plus. And we actually have something called fair fares, which is for lower income people. They can get, it's almost free.
So you're saying that you want a nice relationship. But would you plan on the specific policies to be his partner or his obstacle?
No, I plan to be a partner, but let's look at what those policies are. They have to be policies I agree with. We're not defunding the police. We're going to continue supporting the police. I told countless police officers this morning at Officer Islam's funeral in the Bronx that we support you. But universal child care, I can work on that with you. I already proposed it in my budget last year, but I just can't do it in 1 year. It has to be a little bit of a longer runway. And these are the conversations I already had with candidate Mamdani, our nominee. So I'm not hostile to these ideas. I'm a Democrat. I've got a good progressive heart, but I also have to make sure we have the resources to do everything we want to do. So I think the mayor, whoever the mayor is, this is not determined yet, but I'll work with anybody who wants to have a positive, healthy relationship, but don't mess with me. Don't mess with me.
A broader question on what he represents. There's a dramatic shift we're seeing in the Democratic Party where you see a Democratic Socialist beating the establishment in New York City. What does that tell you about where the Democratic Party is now? And do you think the party is starting to reject pragmatists in your mold?
No, they're not, because we keep winning as well. You look at our congressional races, you look at, I do not think there's a rejection of this. I also think that we've always talked about a big tent, right? This is evidence there is a big tent. And I can work with anyone. Uh, it doesn't have to be a relationship of hostility, but I also can moderate people. I can say, we're not going extreme, issues related to, businesses, for example. I need businesses to prosper and be successful in New York City so they can hire people. I don't want to drive people out. I don't want them to be anxious about this. So I'm spending a lot of time, as you mentioned, just talking to you. I say, listen, it's not going to be that bad. We can get through this. I mean, everybody calm down. There's a lot of concern about Michelle Wu in Massachusetts as the mayor of Boston. Oh, she's so progressive. She's doing very well. So I think when you get these individuals who campaign with a broad vision, they get into the job of actually having to govern, things change, they shift. And often those individuals gravitate a little bit more to the middle because they want to get accomplishments and not just rhetoric. So I think there could be a path that works very well.
Yeah, the reality of doing the job often changes the policy agenda.
That's right.
So let's turn to some of Trump's policies and how they're impacting your state. The first is tariffs, which are meant to go into effect tomorrow. There is a challenge in court, but I don't think anyone should bank on that. New Yorkers certainly will end up paying more over time, at least for things like groceries, gas, cars. Can you put a number on it? How much more do you think the average American and average New Yorker will be paying?
$6,000 to $8,000 more
a year.
Yes. The costs of everything are going to go up. I mean, I'm a mom, right? I'm thinking mentally back to school shopping. I remember going through August means you're going to be in the store a lot.
Yeah.
Sneakers and everything. Sneakers have gone up 72% in their costs since May. So you've got a couple of kids. Look how much your costs are going up. $42 to 70 something. I mean, it's extraordinary. Backpacks, holiday gifts in a few months. So people are going to be shocked at how much everything costs for them. And what's so frustrating to me is that my entire agenda announced last year and into the spring for my budget was affordability. I said, we have to put more money back in your pockets. We heard loud and clear how frustrated people were with the last presidential election, right? Talk about the pocketbook issues, economics. We've never stopped talking about that. That's a new concept to us, but people need to hear it in a different way. And I said, I have a path with the largest middle-class tax rate cut in 70 years, a inflation rebate to help families struggling, about $400 per family. That'll help cover the additional cost of those sneakers.
That's new this year?
Brand new. It's all brand new. We actually collected more money in revenues because inflation drove the cost of everything up over the past years, even before it went off the charts with the tariffs. So we had more sales tax revenues than we expected. I said, I'm not keeping that money. I'm putting that back in New Yorkers' pockets. So I go around the state, I sit in diners, I talk to moms, and they're so happy to hear that someone actually understands how hard it is. I mean, I was the mom who had to buy diapers and formula. I thought we were going to be rich once the kids outgrew those because it's like so much more money back in your pocket. But we also have a $1,000 tax credit for children under the age of 4, $500 for older kids. We're also covering the complete costs of lunches and breakfasts in schools. That's about $1,600 per child. That could be $3,200 for a family of 2. So It all adds up to about $5,000 will be coming into the pockets of New Yorkers. So what's so frustrating, I got this through. I had a lot of fights with the legislature, got it done just a couple months ago. Now, if their expenses go up $6,000 because of the Trump tariffs, they're not getting ahead. So no wonder people are so frustrated. It's maddening.
So now they just break even. That's unreal. You're in a different position from a lot of states because you share a border with Canada. And so you've already started to experience in New York the impact of some tariffs because there have been a series of tariffs put on Canada already. I wonder if you just give us an understanding a little bit. What are you telling other governors who haven't experienced the hit yet but are about to? And what can they actually do to respond?
Well, let me just say, it's not just the tariffs. Donald Trump destroyed the relationship with our best friend that we've had since the War of 1812 was over. Once that war was over, they've been our strongest ally. And I grew up on the border. I grew up in Buffalo. I was there this past weekend with my 3-year-old granddaughter. First time she came to Buffalo.
First? Yeah.
He lives in Washington,
Yes.
where my children were born. But I took her to the Children's Museum. I said, "How are you doing?" They said, "We're doing terrible." I said, "Why?" "The Canadians aren't coming." She says, "Every cultural institution, the zoo, the baseball games, Canadians are so upset that Donald Trump really just insulted them by saying they should be the 51st state, that they're boycotting our country." So there used to get about 2,000 people from Canada a month. They had 40 last month. So this is happening all
Whoa.
over New York, the North Country, our border up there, these tourism towns. They're charming up near Lake Placid, the Adirondacks. I was just up there. The streets are ghost towns. So there's that impact on the local businesses, the hotels, the restaurants, little downtowns are dying because of this. And ironically, that is also Elise Stefanik's district, but that's another story. So I've got a lot of ammunition here. But with respect to the tariffs, let's start with farmers. The farmers have lost their trading marketplaces with Canada. The Canadians are not buying their products because they're so angry. The cost of everything they get, they used to get steel and aluminum from Canada. You think about all the farmers have to repair the fences or the barns. They use a lot of steel and aluminum. The shavings that go into a stall. We're a big dairy state that comes from Canada because they have so many trees. Guess what? They said they can't afford that anymore. So one farmer told me his costs, and this is before the latest tariffs. He said it put $10,000 more costs on his back than before. That's $120,000 more this farmer who's barely making it has to cover because of these tariffs. So real people are being hurt. The cost for families, the farmers, and so other states should be aware. The ripple effect is going to be extraordinary. Whether it's the tourism impact, Canadians aren't going to Florida anymore either, by the way. You go to a lot of communities in Florida, they're selling their homes now, their condos, where they go escape the cold winters. So I think there's impacts people aren't even quantifying that I'm seeing in real time as the governor of New York. And what you can do about it, we're trying to make peace with the Canadians, but they say, you know what they say to us? I said, we love you. We love Canada. And we don't support this. They said, but your country elected him not once, but twice.
Mm.
We can't forgive you twice. And that really hurt. Now, these are our friends and allies. And now these tariffs, they feel like, we're just punching them in the nose. And guess what? They're punching back.
Yeah. We're seeing this all over the world where U.S. allies are looking to make new friends and rely less on the U.S. because they just think of us as no longer, as very fickle at the least.
We're not reliable. They don't want to have relationships based on a country that every 4 years it could change from friend to foe. And I understand that. And the geopolitical implications of this administration are going to go way beyond his time. I don't think the Canadians are going to forgive us when Donald Trump's out of office. I think it's going to take a long time to heal. In other countries, our allies, they don't trust us anymore. That's something I don't think anyone could have anticipated to the scale that we're experiencing now.
Another fundamental shift we're seeing with Trump is you're talking about it a little bit here with him. He's putting a lot more pressure on the states, which means on governors. You're seeing it with the lost revenue that's going to happen because of tariffs and because of these challenged relationships. But you're really going to take a hit when some of these Medicaid cuts come through that have just passed in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. I want to talk a little bit, just share with folks what some of the research shows that the impact on New York State alone could be devastating. Because of the bill, the Medicaid impact could be $13 billion annually. I understand 2 million New Yorkers could lose their coverage. Hospitals face $3 billion in uncompensated care. Does New York have the money to backfill these cuts, or are people in hospitals going to be on their own?
No state has that money. I don't think there's a state in the nation that can backfill these expenses. And you also didn't mention that 750,000 children will lose Medicaid coverage. Little children will not get health care they need. So what's going to happen? People will head right into a hospital when they're sick because they can't go to a doctor. They won't have coverage. The hospitals that will be giving them care for even minor illnesses, they're going to run up their costs. They're not going to be able to offset that with Medicaid dollars coming in. They'll lay off people. So first of all, our healthcare industry will lose workers. And ultimately, we have a lot of hospitals on the fringe right now. They're still not recovered from COVID and all the additional expenses. They're not going to make it. And so someone who's thinking about this, it's not just someone who receives Medicaid who's going to lose care. it's everybody in the community will suffer when that hospital is no longer there. So it's a huge hit to our budget. We have to come up with $750 million this year to make up for cuts, about $3 billion next year. But hospitals and nursing homes, they are terrified of this. And I was always counting on being able to take back the house. So we have one really bad year and we put it back together like Humpty Dumpty. We try to put it all get back together in January of 2027. But now, again, we talked at the outset, with Republicans cheating and stealing congressional seats that should be Democratic, it's going to be tough if we don't overcome this.
Can I ask you, because you're in a different position as the governor to understand this, some of these cuts don't actually go into effect until after the midterms, with the theory being that this will help Republicans get reelected and people won't feel the pain till later. But I also hear that premiums could start to go up next year and we'll start to feel the effects sooner. So what's your understanding of when regular folks will actually start to feel the pinch of these changes?
Already. People are already starting to feel that there's cutbacks. Governments are cutting back because this is going to be for counties as well. And just think about the fact that we now have to have, an overhaul of our system that's going to try to identify how to cover people who are you have to work now, right? They're saying you have to work. So how do we manage that? So these are colossal expenses that are not budgeted for. So governments are going to start feeling the pinch. What do governments do? They start laying people off. Hospitals are starting to feel the pinch already. Insurance companies are already getting anxious. So I think, first of all, you're going to feel the effect of a loss of jobs. At a time when we've been recovering from the pandemic, New York City was the epicenter. It took us the longest to come back, but we're there now. And this is a huge setback to us. It is so maddening. So I think, and also this whole ploy of we'll make the pain really bad in 2027. They won't remember it. I will not let them forget what they did. There's 7 Republican members of Congress in the state of New York. And I will make sure, working to raise money into the party and helping Hakeem Jeffries and everyone, I'll make sure that this is the front and center of the campaign. So I don't know if they have to feel the pain themselves that day when they walk into the polling place, but they know it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing they could possibly budget for. No one has that kind of money to make up for that. If you're on Medicaid, how are you going to make up for that loss? So the state will do what we have to do. We're not insensitive to the human pain. We're here to help people and lift them up. It's our job. But I have to deal with financial realities as well. So we'll figure it out. And we'll take steps starting in January when our legislature returns. But it's going to be brutal.
It's going to be brutal.
There's no sugarcoating it.
I want to ask you one more on policy, and I know which has to do with ICE. We have seen these masked so-called ICE agents ripping people off the streets, including in your state, often without due process. Their faces are covered, all of that. And we don't know who these people are, not their identity because of the mask, but we understand a lot of them might just be bounty hunters or private investigators paid per head, basically, that they bring in. Are you as governor able to do anything to try to get the federal government to reveal how these people are recruited, under what terms they're working, or provide any transparency into what's happening?
This is a challenge for states. We want to stop this practice. In fact, I pointed out to ICE agents. ICE agents picked up an elected official in the city of New York. I had to go down and literally spring him from that after demanding his return after an hour of them saying no. They were going to charge him with assault. He was trying to escort someone to the courthouse, and people bump each other a little bit. He didn't assault an ICE officer, and so they were coming up with trumped up charges. But we got that dismissed. But I had a solid hour to talk to ICE agents. We're coming and going, as they wouldn't let me in the room at first. And I said, "Why do you guys have to do that? What's with the mask? Why do you have to look so scary? Can't you just walk up to people? You have a badge, or identify yourselves? Because we don't know if you're someone's going to kidnap somebody. I mean, you got to understand the fear that we have as residents and our citizens and our immigrants and migrants. And they said, you know what they said? They said, well, we don't want to get identified because we could get doxxed and our families could be threatened and all this. I said, but 32,000 NYPD officers do it every day. They go out there. They're exposed. I have thousands of state police officers who go out there every day and don't have to mask themselves. So what sets you apart from them? These people are not likely to have guns on them, by the way. I mean, these are people working in a pizzeria or a high school student from Long Island who got picked up with her mother. Or you have the situation in Tom Homan's hometown. Get this. A few months ago, there was a raid on a farm up in Sackett's Harbor, tiny little community up on Lake Ontario. ICE agents burst through the door, guns blaring, masks on. They take a third grader out of her bed, her high school brothers, twin brothers, and the mom, throw them into a van where they sit for hours. Where's the dad, you might ask? He's already milking cows on the dairy farm because that's what you do at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. How hardworking these people are. The farmer, and this is not made up, it's literally called Old McDonald's Farm. The farmer talked to me, one of the biggest Republicans up in the North Country, outraged that his members of Congress, Elise Stefanik and Claudia Tenney, did nothing to help. And so the community rose up. I called Tom Homan. I said, I want them returned. They were in a detention center in Louisiana. They gave us some BS argument on why they're being detained. I said, I want them home. And there were protests. 1,000 people turned out to protest in the most Republican part of our state. So I think they touched the nerve. So do I have a way to stop the ICE agents from doing that? I do not. And I wish I did. I condemn it every day of the week. It's wrong. And it's intimidating. These are people living among us. They're serving us. They're helping us. They're filling jobs that otherwise people don't want to do. And they'll get beyond that. My grandfather was a migrant farm worker. He came over from Ireland and they wouldn't hire the Irish back then. And so he worked on the wheat fields of South Dakota for a long time. And then he became a domestic servant with my grandma. And then he worked at the steel plant. But you know what? Like, they're good, hardworking people. That's why immigrants have always flocked to our country and our state, because there's opportunities and we embrace them. I'm at the funeral today of a Bangladeshi police officer who lost his life trying to defend a building of strangers, but that's what they do. I mean, it's got to stop. It's got to stop.
Well, if you're able to use your position in any way to try to get some transparency around what standards the federal government is using to recruit them, what incentives they're putting out there to get these guys to behave this way, I know that there'd be enormous interest.
Oh, I know there. I agree. When we go to court, we do. I mean, I'm just saying, the legal process is just stew. I get a report every week of how many lawsuits we're involved in with the Trump department or Trump administration. This is a growth industry for lawyers.
Yeah.
They're suing all the time, but the courts are so unreliable. They're intimidated. And that's what's so frightening about what's happening to our country.
So I know I got to let you go. I just want to ask, we call ourselves News Not Noise because we try to help people turn down the noise. What do you do to turn down the noise in your life when it gets all too much? Do you have any tricks, meditation, exercise? What do you do?
You know, I take a walk and I love engaging with people on the streets. I walk the streets of Manhattan or wherever I am. I talk to people. I walk up to police officers and say, thank you. I see a little kid. I give them a hug. I draw energy from people. So I don't sit alone and read a book or listen to music. I'm energized when I see the people I'm so proud to represent. That's what gets me going.
Okay. Well, then you're in the right job. Governor, thank you so much for your time today. I'd love to have you back as things progress. Grateful.
Happy to do so. Bye-bye.
Okay. Take good care.